for the chapter. So it's a new venture for us. And we're also thrilled that Watermark Learning was available to us to offer this webinar by Dr. Susan Heindorn. I feel very fortunate to have such an experienced speaker to share information with us about business process improvement. And I think it's going to be a great hour. I'm going to hold on some other chapter announcements to give the full hour to Susan. So, Susan, welcome, and thank you again for giving the East Tennessee chapter some of your expertise. We appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I am very honored to be with you all. Just a little housekeeping stuff. If at any time you have questions, you can either put it in the question box, or if you raise your hand, for those people who individually signed in, I would be more than happy to unmute you if you do have a question. So given that, I'm hoping that everybody is really excited about process improvement. Hope every process needs improvement, and so we're going to be talking about that. We're going to give you some tips and tricks and see where we go from there. So we're going to talk about what is process improvement, what's the case for it, why would we want to do it in the first place. We're going to give you really 6 simple steps to business process improvement. We're going to give you actually a few design and analysis and design techniques also, so that I'm hoping when you get done with this, if you're doing a process improvement effort in your organization, you can actually use some of the things that we cover in this session. So first of all, we all have to agree on what a process is. We're going to just start with the basics, and then we're going to build from there. So a process actually takes inputs. It adds value to those inputs. It transforms those inputs into outputs. And hopefully those outputs are things that are going to meet our business objectives, and most of all, add value to the organization. One of the things we need to do when we're doing process improvement is focus on value. If a process is not adding value, then we have to question why it is. I'm sure that if any of you as business analysts have been doing any process improvement, you would hear some of the adages. It's kind of the way we've always done it. And sometimes that just isn't a good reason for its existence, right? And so we have to look at the process and say, hey, does it provide value to the organization? Does it meet business objectives? So process improvement itself is just really an approach. It's a systematic approach to help us optimize our processes to achieve results and to maximize and optimize the value that that process brings to an organization. So the premise is that almost every, I would say it says every process, I would say almost every process, maybe every process can be improved. So this one's going to be kind of hard. Often I do this presentation in real life, so you can't see me wave my arms or anything. But I don't know about you, but when I eat a banana, I take that, that little tip that it has, where that stem, and I take the stem and I peel it. And then I, peel the banana, and then I'm left with that little piece at the bottom where oftentimes the rest of the banana pops out of the peel, right? Or you get, messy fingers. So that's kind of how I eat a banana. But the thing is that there's other ways to eat a banana, which might be more conducive. So rather than taking the stem and peeling it down, and you're left with this mess of banana, or the banana falls all over the place, is that you pinch it at the end right here, and then you use the stem as a handle, kind of like a popsicle stick. And it's like, well, how come I didn't think of it, And why didn't I? Because I learned from my mother, who learned from her mother, and somewhere down the line, people just taught me how to eat a banana one way, not thinking there might be another way to eat the banana that might be more efficient, might be easier, less messy. And so if you even think of some of the simple processes that you have around you every day, we probably can have some improvements. So what is the case for BPI? Why would we even want to do process improvement, except maybe it makes our life easier? Well, number one, it's going to increase customer satisfaction. And you'll probably know that over the span of time, I guess you could say, that our customers have wanted different things. I know I was just teaching class today, and I was talking about how much customers have changed their idea, and what gives them satisfaction today is not what gave them satisfaction yesterday. So I'm a big Amazon person, that I shop on Amazon just because I don't get time to shop very often. And I have to admit that they have their pluses and minuses, but they spoiled me. I am now expecting everything on my doorstep within 2 days. Now, before, when I used to order things, through the mail, if I got it in a week and a half, hey, woohoo, this is great. It's wonderful. And now it's like if it takes more than 4 or 5 days, it's like, what? What's up with that? So one of the things we have to look at is if our customers' expectations are that, we ship faster, we make it faster, we get it to them faster, or we have better quality for less price, whatever that satisfaction point is, might be a case for improving our business processes. Also, employee morale. If something is a little bit easier to do versus very convoluted, takes a lot of time, our employees can be a lot happier. It's like, okay, now I took this process that generally takes me, 2 hours. Maybe it's a report I have to create every month for management. It took me 2-3 hours, and then that wasn't even collecting the information, just putting it together. And now I have all the data right in front of me, right? And so that's going to kind of make my life happier. Reducing processing time and cost. If I can make things streamlined, obviously I'm going to save cost. It could be the cost of just head count. So if I can do something in 2 days where it used to take me 5 days, hey, all the better. That reduces cost. We're going to talk a lot about waste here in this session. And so what we want to do in any process is reduce waste. What are those steps? What are those key activities that are not needed, that we're just doing it because we think we should be doing it, and nobody ever questioned that? And then improve process flows. So rather going around the mulberry bush or going through the hedges or whatever you want to call it, is there a way we can streamline the process? A lot of times when I do process improvement, like many of you, I do swim lanes. Swim lanes are great because you can take your process and say, okay, what are the departments that are involved in doing this process? Or what are the different roles that are involved in this process? The nice thing is that you can see all the handoffs. And if you are handing things off to one department and then to another department and then to another department, and back to the first department, you are not creating a nice flow. So if we're going to do process improvement, we want to look, do we need to do all those handoffs? Are the right people actually doing the work? Can we streamline this so that it just goes in a nice sequence versus handing them off to everyone else? And then, of course, improved quality, hopefully, and ultimately increased sales, which is always kind of nice. If you've been in quality, you know Edward Deming. He actually said, it's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory. So if you think of your life, whether you've been here for a while or you're on the younger side, it had a lot of changes in the world, right? Our whole technology has changed. Social media has been brought to the forefront in everything that we do. We communicate differently than we used to. And if we were not adaptive to that, it would be really pretty tough to just keep competitive, our organizations keep competitive, us to keep our skill sets up. And so it really is about change. Now, the old adage, and it wasn't that long ago actually, where an organization would create a product or a service, and they'd say, gee, what do we have to sell it for? You know, what price are we going to put on this? And generally it was, we would look at it and say, okay, what does it cost to make it? What spiff do we need to make it make sense for us to provide that service or that product? And that's what the customers will pay, right? So that kind of makes sense. We take our cost, add, you know, 5%, 10%, whatever we want for revenue, and that's the price. But that has changed a lot. So now what is interesting is that the customers are really telling you what price they'll pay for it. So you can go to a Best Buy and say, oh, gee, I like that TV, and you take out your cell phone and you go, okay, where else can I get this cheaper? And Best Buy has caught on now to saying, wait a minute, stop the presses, we'll match that price wherever you find it, because they were finding too many people going to their store, looking at whatever appliance or TV that they were looking at and saying, hey, where else can I get this at a cheaper rate? So now it's actually the customer that is defining what they're willing to pay. We still have to pay the price to manufacture it. That hasn't changed unless we've been able to outsource to different countries where the resources are a little bit cheaper, which means that kind of cuts into our revenue, right? And so if we can't determine what the price is to the market, because the market's determining the price for us, what can we do? The only thing we can do is reduce cost. And one of the ways we reduce cost is actually to do process improvement. How can we streamline them, use less resources, make them more efficient, take out wasteful activities? How do we do that so if we have less cost, then we still have more revenue? So those are some of the ways that our marketplace has changed, and it has even deemed process improvement more important. Now, according to some of the research, and I'm not sure I really buy 95% of all activities are considered non-value added, but it's certainly a large amount. And even if you'd reduced it to 85% of the activities, you would still have a lot of activities in your processes that are called non-value added. What does non-value added mean? It means that it's not something that the clients want to pay for. It's not something that they need. Now, some non-value added activities are just going to be needed, such as payroll. Well, a customer doesn't want to pay for your payroll, but chances are if you don't have payroll in your organization, you won't have too many employees for too long, right? So there's some of those things that are non-value added from a customer perspective you just need to do. We need compliance. We got to follow the regulations, or we won't exist if we don't follow them, because we'll have to pay fines and our CEO goes to jail or whatever it is. But what we want to focus on is looking at our processes. What are those things that add value from a customer perspective? The customer will say, yes, I am willing to pay for this. And we'll give you tips on how to find that non-value added work and how we get rid of some of that. So the challenges is, of course, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is, oh, that's the way we've always done it. And if I took a sample of all the raised hands here, I bet you 10 to 1 you've heard that, because I think almost everyone of us has done that. Well, that's just the way that we've always done it. So I'm going to tell you a little story of incident that I came across, and one of the things was, because it's the way they always done it, I was doing a really big change project in out east, and it was working with a HR group, and they, you know how HR, they get all your information. So when you're a new hire, they put in all the stats. They put in your social security, your address, what job you have, at what salary, what's your starting date. They put on all that information. And then if you stay with the company, every time you move positions or move up in the ladder, they put that information in. So one of the people in HR, we were kind of watching, and She would put all the information in their computer system. It's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, kind of flows. And then all of a sudden she disappeared, and I'm going, where did she go? And she went to the vault. They had this huge walk-in vault, and she comes out with and some of you probably won't know this, but a long time ago there used to be legal-sized, kind of a hardboard, manila colored stock paper. It was stronger than just the white paper that you usually print on. It was kind of a little bit more like hardboard, but it could still be put in a typewriter. So she brought that out, and it was a copy of the employee's information just as she put it in the computer. And she took that, she put it in her typewriter, which I was kind of surprised they had typewriters, but she put it in a typewriter and she typed in the same information. And I said, okay, that's interesting. So can you tell me why you were putting it in the computer system and then you went and typed it on that manila hardboard? And she said, of course, that's the way we've always done. That's the way I was taught. Well, when she was taught, they were in the middle of an implementation and they were doing some concurrent processing. And so the person that was there before, they were putting it in the computer, and they were also doing it by hand to make sure that, both records were the same. And at some point they were supposed to stop that. Only new people came in. The person that had previously been there during the implementation just kept on doing it. And so that's how she taught all the new people on how to do it. And so one of the things that you always want to ask for is like, okay, tell me why, how did we get there? Do we really need to review things 4 times? So lack of a process mindset, that's another challenge that we get, is that they only do things because that's the way they were taught. They don't think of it as a whole process, or they also don't think about it as a process just doesn't end in their department. A process goes down the line. And so looking at it from a big picture, sometimes we just get indoctrinated into looking at our own little piece of the pie instead of the entire pie. Other challenges is really aligning any improvement effort, and this is really key if you're going to be successful, to the business strategy. So where is the business going? What are their strategic initiatives? What are the customers desiring these days? And aligning that improvement effort to that strategy. You don't want to sit there and do process improvement with a process that just really doesn't help the business meet their strategic initiatives. So if you're going to apply process improvement, I would sit there and make sure that, let's make sure that the strategic initiatives, all those processes that support those strategic initiatives are watched first, and then be able to kind of move on. The other key thing that you need to do if you're doing really successful process improvement is engaging senior leadership. So engaging them, they have to get their buy-in, saying, yeah, that makes sense, we need to improve this process, as well as all the employees. Get the employees involved. If you're changing their world through process improvement, what you're doing, you're changing their process, you're changing their way of doing things. So if you want to get their buy-in and their acceptance and not have them resistant to the change, bring them on board. So get the employees on board, get senior leadership on board. You're going to have a better chance of getting engaged. And then being able to sustain the results. This is the one downfall I think a lot of companies do when they're doing process improvement, is that they'll be really good at the upfront stuff, and they'll implement a new process and say, hey, this is good, we're implementing it, and they train everybody, and they get everybody on board, and it's really good for maybe the first 30 days, 60 days, but then 90 days we sort of wane. We don't get to sustain the results. Maybe somebody went on vacation, forgot how the new way was of doing things, so they kind of go, I'm gonna try the old way, see how that works. And what we found, at least what I found too, working with clients, is that there tends to be pretty good behavior on that new process for about 90 days, and then it kind of trails off going, I wonder if I can kind of do it the old way, or I wonder if I could do this workaround, or or maybe even though we trained them, they forgot some of the training, because oftentimes for people it's like drinking from a fire hose, and they forget some of it, and maybe we didn't do cheat sheets or something. So the thing is once you do process improvement, look at that 6 month, 9 month, a year later. Are they doing it the way they need to do it? Is that change staying and remaining? The other thing to kind of, as a suggestion, I would guess, big suggestion actually, is to make sure that when you are taking or implementing software, make sure that you do process improvement first. I know there are a lot of my clients go, oh, we'll just do process improvement along the way, so we'll implement this new software and it's going to mandatory make process improvements anyway. You can make slight process improvements that way, but it's really hard to see the big picture because you're just implementing little snippets here and there versus actually analyzing the entire process and leveraging that information to get rid of things maybe that you don't need, or get rid of all those wasted activities. So here's the framework that we're going to take a look at. First, you want to model the process, the current state. We always have to look at current state. What are they doing today? We're going to analyze it, create that future state. And when we create that future state, we're going to look at some design principles. How do we make the optimal process? What will make our processes more efficient? And then we also have to look at transformation. This is that people side of change. How do we get people to buy into this change? How do we get people to sustain the change? And we'll talk about that in a little bit, as well as monitoring and managing the change itself. So this is called business process management. There's also, if any of you are certified BAs, I'm just going to let you know there's another certification out there. Yay, there's a cert for that. So it's business process management. There's a certification for it if you're really excited about certifications. But business process management is that approach to make organizations more effective, more efficient, and also being able to adapt. Our world is changing phenomenally fast these days. And if we can't have processes that can change with the needs, we've kind of set our organization back a ways. And so we got to make sure that whatever we come up with makes sense and it's adaptive to today's world. So first of all, we got to model the process. Okay, so there's all kinds of different modeling. Usually I use ISO notation. It's generally the square boxes are activities. You got the arrows that imply directionality. There's also UML notation, and there's BPMN notation, since this is not a process modeling class, but just to aware that there's other notation. Oftentimes I use Visio just because it's the simplest to use, but I modeled the current state. Now here's the key thing when you're doing process improvement. You want to model the current state only until you're comfortable at understanding it. You don't want to dig in detail because you want to spend most of your time redesigning the process, making those process improvements. So just do it to the degree, and this is where the art comes in, to the degree that everybody understands it's the same and you have enough information in which you can base your understanding and design the future state from it. So number one, you got to model the process. Then two, you're going to analyze the process. So if I've done a swim lane, I like to kind of do swim lanes so I know, okay, what are either the departments that are working within this process. Maybe it's by role. Sometimes I'll do a swim lane by here's the manual processes, here's the system processes. Maybe I can automate some of those manual processes. Are there any bottlenecks? So when you're analyzing the current state and you look at a swim lane and you have those handoffs, where are the where are the, bottlenecks? If it's sitting on somebody's desk, waiting for signature for a week, well, that's a bottleneck. So a lot of times you can do time studies and say, hey, where are all the bottlenecks? Where are all the time constraints? It takes us 5 days for processing, mortgage processing. Maybe is there any way we can make it down to 3 days or whatever else it is? I think it's more than 5 days to do a mortgage, but you kind of get it. And then we say, okay, if we look at this process, because we already created it, and where are the biggest problems and what's causing those problems? And so maybe one of the issues is it's sitting on somebody's desk for 5 days waiting for signature. Okay, why are we waiting for a signature? And so you're going to do some type of root cause analysis. You might use the 5 whys. If you've heard of the 5 whys, the premise is you ask 5 whys in a row. So why are you doing? So why is it sitting on your desk? Well, it's waiting to be signed. Why is it waiting to be signed? Because we can't go forward without a signature. Why do we have to wait for a signature? I mean, so you keep digging down and digging down. You might want to do a fishbone. Okay, so that fishbone is, in this case, this is just kind of an example of bad coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, we have a dirty pot. So why do we have bad coffee? In the fishbone, I actually combine the 5 whys. Why do we have bad coffee from an equipment perspective? Why do we have bad coffee from a materials perspective, people, procedures? And then you just kind of brainstorm. Well, maybe we get old coffee, or the grounds aren't fresh, or whatever it is. And then you might want to do a Pareto chart. That's a nice tool to use to be able to say, where do you want to spend your time? So I would probably want to spend my time where most of the incidences or issues happen, which would be column B here. Or if you do a scatter plot looking for correlation. So again, this isn't a root cause, but that's what you would do kind of next. Now, as you're looking at understanding the current state process and you're doing your root cause analysis, beware of biased analysis. This is kind of the chocolate analogy. So let's say that I like chocolate, and I'm just going to say I do like chocolate. Maybe many of you like chocolate. And I'm trying to think of a reason why I can eat chocolate. So if I'm trying to eat maybe healthier, or I'm trying to say, you know what? I think chocolate is good for you. And according to research, some research anyway, maybe you've heard this too, that supposedly dark chocolate is good for you. but not a lot, but a little bit. And so if I am going to do some root cause analysis and I'm going to look at the data, what am I going to look at? I'm going to look at all the data that substantiates my claim that dark chocolate's actually healthy for you. So that's one of the reasons why we want to, as we're doing analysis for process improvement, is watch our biases. Because we tend to look for information that supports our conclusions, right? So if my thing was chocolate and I'm going to say, oh, chocolate's healthy, I'm going to look for all the data that supports my hypothesis that chocolate's healthy, and I'm going, see, there I can have chocolate. This is what it tells me. So it's the same thing when you're looking at your processes. Do I have any biases that I think this is what we should do, or this is the solution, or this is what's causing this? Because I'm going to look at data that supports my conclusions. And so just be aware of that. Know that that can really get you out of whack. All right, so watching out for the REs. This is a slide you might want to refer back to. As you look at your processes, anything that says or has an RE in front of it, it's suspect. Why? Because it makes us go backward in the process. So normally we go from start to finish, right? We create the service, we do this process, we create this widget, whatever it is. But anytime we have an RE, that means we have to redo something, right? We might have rework. We might have to remake it, retrain it, repeat that process. Maybe we rejected something, which means we have to make it over again if we are making widgets, or reship it, or it gets to be a return. So when you're analyzing your processes, look for all the things that say RE. Oh, this is where we recheck, or this is where we reissue this, or this is where we recall it. And I'm not saying that sometimes there's not reasons to do that, but it's a good way to find waste. How many times do we have to rework that? If we have to rework something quite a bit, our process isn't too good. Where in the process is creating that rework? If we get a lot of returns, why are we getting returns? Is there something in our process that's causing returns? Do we have to recheck? I was in one working on one process, and the results of the data were checked 4 times. And it's like, okay, I can understand checking the data once or twice, but 4 times becomes a waste. Well, then we don't really know if what if the people make a mistake? Well, what is in your process that will prevent them from making mistakes? So you can actually design a new process where you give them indicators to let them know if they are making a mistake, so that you don't have to do 4 reviews. That's crazy. That's time consuming. That's things that you don't need to be doing if you're trying to get it out faster or provide a better service. So, key thing, this is one of the things I think you can use when you leave here, watch out for the REs. The other thing you can do is identify other areas of waste. Transportation. Okay, every time you have to transport something from here to there, okay, you just had waste. You just had time that's not adding any value. You just moved something from one place to another. Inventory. How much do you have in inventory? So I think it's less now that organizations are more lean and they're trying to get rid of waste and they're trying to have less in their inventory. But what does inventory do? Collects a lot of dust. It's maybe things we don't sell. It's things that can get broken if they're widgets. If it's paper or processes, like even because I work for a training firm, one of the things that we have in inventory is course material. The reason being is that originally we thought, well, if we can print 25 of these, but we only need 19, we get a discount, okay, right? Because if you print more, then you pay less per printing. Okay, that kind of makes sense on its face. But the thing is that we change a lot of our materials. Sometimes we update them every 6 months. Okay, now you just threw away, what, 7, 8, 9 copies of the old stuff because we can't use it anymore because we've updated it. So whether it be paper in inventory or pens or office supplies or computers or whatever it is in inventory, do you need it in inventory? Are you managing your inventory correctly? Is it collecting dust because nobody wants to buy it? Is it obsolete? Even if you have to walk around it, that takes time. Excess motion. If every time that I print something and I have to go all the way down the hallway to the printer and then come all the way back, I just wasted time. Now, it's probably healthier that I walk to the printer and walk back, but it's excess motion. Is there a way that I could process something faster if I don't have to walk all the way down to the hallway to get to the printer? Now, sometimes we kind of like having one printer because then we don't have to support or pay for support on every single printer. We have one printer, but yeah, we have excess motion. How do we balance that? Waiting time. Any of you gone to a doctor or dentist? Most of our times I think are valuable. And so then, you know, wait time, they're getting better actually, I think. So I know they've done some process improvement, but you could, oftentimes you get to the doctor and you got to wait in line to sign in. Then you sit in a bunch of chairs and then you wait until you're called. And then you get to go into the exam room and talk to the nurse. And then you get to wait in a cold exam room till the doctor's available. And then he looks at you and then it says, okay, well, I want you to get run a blood sample or whatever it is. And then you wait again. There's a lot of waiting time there. How could they make that more efficient? And I think actually sometimes they are. But is there a waiting time in your organization? Is it sitting on somebody's desk waiting to be signed? Maybe because they didn't know it was there. Maybe because instead of having it put in paper, maybe we could have made it electronically and just sent it to them and they could automatically just approve it over the system. Another places of waste, over-processing. If you are been in project management, kind of gold plating, you know, do we have to give the customer the very, 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 very super best, the Cadillac, when they would be okay with the lesser car? Because they don't want to pay for a Cadillac. They didn't ask for a Cadillac. They don't even want a Cadillac. They just want something that'll take them from point A to point B. So are you doing any over-processing? Are you trying to make it perfect? One of our owners actually kind of helped me out in this because I do a lot of creation of our course materials, and I'm a perfectionist, and I will admit that. And so I always want to tweak. I always want to make it better. Oh, this would be a better exercise. Oh, this would be a better sequence. And she would say, Susan, enough. Stop. You're over processing. You have to make it good. That doesn't mean, you know, sloppy work. But when does it no longer provide you value to make it perfect? Where is that sweet spot? Overproduction. Yeah, producing too much that you don't need, and then it just, again, sits there in inventory. Defects. How many defects do you have? If you have defects, figure out where you can minimize those in the process. If there's defects in the process, how do we make sure that there's some signals where they don't get defects? So maybe we create a situation where if we're making widgets, we test the inputs first. We test all those components before we put them in so that we don't have to find the defect at the end, but we test it at the beginning, go, yep, those are right, so we can put them in. So where in your process can you reduce defects instead of waiting until the end? And then underused employee skills. A lot of times it's like, well, you know, we have employees that can do a lot. Or are we underutilizing them? So waste, essentially waste is any activity that absorbs resources and creates no value. But it costs. It costs money, it costs time. So here's an example of a football game. I have to admit, I'm a Vikings fan. A dedicated Vikings fan, because we always get excited at the beginning of the year. We always get disappointed at the end of the year. So that's kind of, you know, par for our course. Although I like football and I do watch a lot of football, but you think if you're trying to improve football, maybe there's a lot of ways to improve it, because you think regulation time is 60 minutes. You know, they play 4 quarters of 15 minutes. However, when you watch a football game, it's like 3.5 hours, right? Of course, there's commercials and stuff in between, and then they have to stop because somebody had a timeout, or they have a replay that they got to look at, see if the call was right. And if you take that 60 minutes, elapsed time of 180, value added time, let's say on the average there's 140 plays per game, and let's say that it takes about 10 seconds to play each move. That's only 23 minutes of value-added stuff. Oops, sorry, that they're actually doing something, which means only 12% is value-added. A lot of it is just waiting and moving, waiting and moving. Okay, they moved the ball, now they wait. Okay, now they move the ball, now you got to wait. So how do you improve that? And I know there's some things that they're trying to do is take less time reviewing plays, or at least trying to make it faster. And I'm sure some of the football players relish that break time because they're probably out of breath. But there's, you know, if you're looking just at value added, that's only 12% of the game. So where in your processes are like a football team, how much is non-value added? Another way that you can analyze processes called the bolo list, which is be on the lookout for anything that's a duplication. Okay, we're doing it here and we're doing it here. It's duplication. One department's doing it, another department's doing it. Or that is really too complex. So maybe we have to do list or checklist or flowcharts or something. Anytime you hear the word coordinate or pass it by me first, or let me look at it, let me review it, expedite it, you know, oh, we got to expedite that shipment. Oh, that means that you're not following the process. It means that you probably added stuff that doesn't add value. People not following the process, people not following the standards, everybody kind of likes to do it in their own way. So you find out that even though 5 departments kind of do the same process, they all do it a little bit differently. Hey, can we have one process that meets everybody's needs and streamline it? Flexibility, is it flexible enough to take on the changes of today's world? So once we've done some of that analyzing, we got to design the future state, right? We got to design the new process. So first of all, we wanted to took out all the REs. We looked at all the things that might get us into trouble on the bolo list. We tried to identify waste. Now we have to design a new process that gets rid of that. So the whole key thing is that we want to do is be able to say, okay, we're going to stop the non-value added work, identify it and say, can we live without this? Can we control the non-value added work, but we have to do it anyway. So if we have to do it, sometimes like payroll, we have to do regulations, we have to follow. Even though the customer doesn't want to pay for it, we have to do it. Can we make sure that those are tightly controlled? And then optimize the value added work. So there's 3 key things to process design optimization. We can look at value, we can look at time, and we can look at quality. And these are really nice checklists that I hope you can use when you leave here tonight. So if you're doing value design, okay, we're trying to optimize value. So can we look at identifying, enhancing any customer interaction points? Where we interact with the customer, because remember, value-added work is what the customer wants to pay for. Are there any other customer interaction points we need to consider? Focus, of course, as we said, value-added activities. Make sure the work is performed where it makes the most sense. So if you're handing off work to another department, but they don't have all the data, they don't have all the information, they don't have all the wrenches and tools to do whatever they were going to do, that probably isn't the best department to handle it. Sometimes departments just get, I would say, voluntold to do something because none of the departments wanted to do it, so we're going to give it to Department X. Well, it didn't make sense to perform it there. Why are we doing that? Ask those questions. So process improvement is hard work, and you have to ask the tough questions. You know, standardize the process, maybe outsource if it makes sense, only if it makes sense. Look at quality. Create that single point of contact. Rather than trying to have 18 different people as the point of contact, have a single point of contact. Makes sense. Involve as few people as possible. If you're looking at your process as a whole, you're trying to make it provide value. Every time you get more people involved, You have to transfer information, you have to transfer data, you have to transfer components if you're making a widget. The less people you have, the less handoffs you have, the more streamlined your process will be. Capture information at the source and share it. I imagine if you look at your company, well, you know, this department puts in customer information, this department puts in customer information, this department puts in customer information, chances are they don't do it the same. Capture it once and then share it. That's that kind of that lookout of duplication work too. Install quality at the source. So every time, I mean, maybe throughout, you check quality so you don't have to wait until the end to figure out, oh, gee, this wasn't quality. And then mistake-proof any of your processes. Mistake-proof is where you put a process together and say, how do we help people prevent them from making mistakes? Maybe we give them a checklist to look at. Maybe we give them some type of signal. So if you think about electrical sockets, okay, so that helps us not electrify ourselves, right? So we put in a plug, there's safety guards all around it, and that is part of, you know, mistake proofing our process. So I won't put a plug in to the wrong thing, so I don't burn it up, I don't hurt myself. There's a lot of safety components on, you know, whether it's a lawnmower or anything else. So where can you mistake proof your processes? Prevent you from doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. And then time optimization. Again, minimizing the handouts. Sometimes this is an overlap. Continuous flow. Reduce batch size. That is kind of counterintuitive, I think, right? Because we think about, okay, the bigger the batches, the more that will have value because we don't have to do it over and over again. But then it just sits in inventory, it's not used, it gets changed, people change their minds. So sometimes reducing batch size is a smart thing to do. Co-locate teams so that I don't have to transfer it to 14 different places. Everybody's together, everybody gets done. Kind of the premise of Agile if you're doing Agile. Co-located team. Not everybody's in their own little cubes. First, redesign, and I had mentioned this before. Redesign, do process improvement, and then automate. You cannot sufficiently and effectively redesign and do improvement if you're just doing it when you're automating something. So let's say we had a good job and we did process improvement. Now we have to have help people transform, okay? So one of the things that when we implement a new process, we implement new technology, which obviously changes the process because technology supports process. We have this wonderful idea that moving from the current state to the future state, magic happens. Everybody's going to be happy. Everybody's going to be excited. Woohoo, I love this. This is great. You're going to have some of those people, but a lot of times there might be people that aren't so excited. So culture does not change because we desire to change. It changes when the organization is transformed and it reflects the realities of people working together every day. So it's really about helping people get to the other side. People like what they're doing. If it's not broke, don't fix it, please. I'm just happy doing it the way I was doing it. So what we have to do is create a burning platform so that the coals get a little too hot and they're a little uncomfortable going, I don't like it here anymore. Can I please move forward? So if you're trying to help people get to the other side, number one, build that burning platform, both from an organizational standpoint and a what's in it for me standpoint. Organizations, I would say, are sort of good at creating that burning platform for the organization. Oh, we have to do this because customers want something different, or we have to do this to keep up with their competitors or whatever. Okay, so that's great. People need to know that. But why do I have to change? Why me? Nobody asked me. So there's going to be some resistance. So we have to, when you build the burning platform, you got to tell people what's in it for them. Is it going to make your life, how is it going to make their lives easier? Less difficult. And then we also, because some people feel the heat and some people go towards the light, sometimes a compelling vision is very helpful. Why do we want to move there? Giving them reason, both organizationally and what's in it for them. We were just talking, I was doing a class on actually just this information today, and they were in one of the projects that they had been working on was a time reporting software, and so now everybody had to report their time. And so what I was trying to get them to do is, what is the burning platform? Well, the burning platform is we're not efficiently allocating our resources. That was from an organizational standpoint. From a personal standpoint is, we kind of want you to get credit for the work that you do. So rather than just saying, well, what did you do this, during your performance review? Then we had them create a compelling vision. And so what is that compelling vision? Well, we can allocate resources quickly on the projects that need it. We know what's time spent, and if we need more resources, we have the data to actually support that versus anecdotal evidence saying, hey, we need more people. And what's in it for that person? Okay, well, that person doesn't have to be asked 5 months later going, okay, and how much time did you spend on that project? It also helps if you're going to cost it to other parts of the organization. What does that cost? Makes your life a little bit more easier. You know exactly what you've been spending your time on. Get credit for what you're doing. And then, of course, to help defining the new steps. Well, you go through training, you go through coaching, helping them get there. Because what you want to help them get to the other side, and you don't want resistance. Resistance will sub-optimize all that work you did to improve that process, because they'll go back to their old way. So in order for them to move forward on that new improved process you just created, build that burning platform, getting that compelling vision, and the next steps. And the other key, of course, is getting the stakeholders involved. If you get them involved, what is their opinion? Get them to advocate for the change. Because if otherwise they're going to say, nobody asked me, I didn't ask for this change. And then resistance is going to set in. And then after you've improved the process, that does not mean your job is done. You can put up your feet, sit and relax. That means you manage and monitor the process, because you know what? After time, waste gets back in. Somebody says, oh, well, we have a client or customer that needs us to do it a different way. And oh, I think this would be a little bit better. And pretty soon you start getting that stuff back in. That's those activities and steps that you didn't need to do. And so create accountability, also process improvement. If you can have a process owner, that helps, that makes decisions. And then you manage and monitor the process to make sure that that waste doesn't get in. So moving to the next step. Get management support for all your process improvement. Make a case. Say, hey, you know what? We can save a lot of money here. We can make ourselves more efficient, more adaptable to our agile environment. Maybe you can take a class. There are BPI classes and BPM classes. Watermark offers classes in that, but there are also others. Do extra reading. Sometimes if you see an improvement, say something. A lot of times I've been an external consultant doing process improvement for many, many years. And when I go into an organization, one of the things I do is saying, hey, you work on this process. If you had to improve it, what would it look like? Where would you start? People know this. They've been working for the process forever going, oh my gosh, you're the first person who asked us this. Well, if I had my druthers, I'd do, and oftentimes They see things, they know things, and they're really good ideas. Start small. If you haven't done it before, maybe take a small process, see if you can improve that, and involve other people. I actually was in one organization that they were really into process improvement, and they said, you know what, we are going to give you 10% of the amount that you save streamlining and making improved processes. Unfortunately, it only worked for about 1.5 years, but everybody was pretty excited to find improvements. But you had to prove that, you know, okay, originally it took this much and there was this much money, so that it wasn't just, oh, I just saved you $500,000, you can give me 5,000, you know. But you know, sometimes there's a little incentives there, but you did have to, you know, prove that, okay, this was what the process cost, now this is what the process costs. So you had to do your due diligence. So with that, it is like 2 minutes. I have a couple minutes for questions. So anyone questions for those of you online, you can just raise your hand. Janie, let me unmute you here. Okay, you're unmuted, Janie.
Hi, we're like just in the midst of doing a lot of this at my office, and I was wondering, the presentation is so great, if we would get a copy, if that was possible.
Yeah, I certainly can. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Marie, do I send a copy to you? Oh, you're muted again, darn it. I will send it to the people who I have contact with, and I'm sure you can get a copy. So I'll make sure that happens.
Susan,
yes.
I'd be happy to get a copy up on our IIDA website so that folks can access it.
Okay.
Oh, that
perfect.
would be wonderful.
That absolutely great. Thank you very much. Any other questions, or the people that are in the group, or I'm going to unmute actually Gwen, so she can talk.
Hi, I don't think we have any questions. Anybody?
Okay.
This has been great, though. There was a lot of enthusiasm on your football slide, I will say.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're not very efficient, but I still enjoy watching.
Yeah, the comments you made about capturing data once really resonated with me, because we're in the middle of doing a lot of data cleanup. So that's a good message to take away.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And sometimes, you know, it doesn't have to be a big process, but you can actually save a lot of work and wasted steps by just doing some of the simple things. So
yeah.
All right.
Well, on behalf of the chapter, Susan, I want to thank you very much. We really appreciate this, and it was a great presentation.
Well, thank you so very much. I'm going to wish everybody the best wishes and the best of luck on your process improvement opportunities, and I will make sure you get the slides.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
You do the same.
Thank you.